this shows the year-on-year increase in federal debt. And you notice until they broke the last tie to gold, it was very tiny. But after they broke the last tie to gold, now they're depreciating the purchasing power greatly. And again, when they depreciate the purchasing power of money, think of your pension, think of your Social Security, think of any annuities, think of any money that's been promised to you. All of that goes away. And again, go to the next slide, please. This comes from the Federal Reserve Flow of Funds report. It shows the total debt in the United States. It's now north of $52 trillion. Well, what's the collateral for all this debt? And again, look how it exploded after the last tie to gold was broken. Turns out that the bulk of the collateral is real estate. And as you know, real estate is melting away. So we're going to have defaults in this country, not the $700 billion or $1 trillion. My guess it's going to be in the tens of trillions of dollars, and this is all over the planet. And now I want to go to something. I want to explain to you how the bankers are really doing you in. One of the things that people don't really understand, and Mr. Greenspan made it very clear in this lecture that he gave that I referenced earlier, is that we guarantee the balance sheets of the banks. All of you folks in this hearing room, all of us around the country, we guarantee their balance sheets. Their assets are protected systemically by the so-called lender of last resort of the Federal Reserve, and their liabilities are protected at the micro level by what they call federal deposit insurance, which is not insurance, it's just a subsidy. So the metaphor that I like, suppose I tell you folks, we're going to play poker, and we're going to play like this. If you play the game, if you win, you keep your winnings. If you lose, the taxpayers will give you more money. Well, who wouldn't play in a game like that? And what's to stop you, say, from pulling to an inside straight against 3 showing? And the answer is regulation. Someone's going to stand over your shoulder and say, pulling to an inside straight against 3 showing is a nutty bet, don't do it. So what do the banks do? They make off-table bets. Think off-balance sheets, special investment vehicles. But the really big elephant in the room, go to the next slide, please, is something they call derivatives. Now, derivatives are just bets. These are bets that the banks make. There's an organization in the world, it's called the Bank for International Settlements. That's an umbrella group for the banks around the planet. And they collect the data on the bets that the banks have made on these derivative bets. And as of June of last year, it summed to $684 trillion. Now, what's the business purpose for banks making $684 trillion worth of bets? Now, again, if they win these bets, they keep the money. If they lose these bets, we have to replenish their balance sheets, as we are doing right now. And go to the next slide, please. And this shows the year-on-year increase in these derivative bets. And even though they tell us that they're deleveraging, in the first half of 2008, they increased by $88 trillion. And I say, is this reckless and irresponsible? And the reason I use that phrase is because Greenspan raised it himself. He said, since they know that we're going to bail them, he said, we don't want them to engage in reckless and irresponsible behavior. And so I raised the issue at that time, at which time the derivative bets totaled $66 trillion. I said, well, how do we know when it gets to reckless and irresponsible? Is $100 trillion reckless and irresponsible? Today it's close to $700 trillion. And go to the next slide, please. And one of the consequences of this, and some of the spin you get from Wall Street, and again, this affects everybody in this room and all the people in Montana, this whole notion is that you save for the future with your IRAs, 401ks, that we have the ownership society, people investing in stocks and whatnot. You recall that President Bush wanted to privatize Social Security. Well, it turns out that the equity markets in the United States are now down by half. And so just when you have 66 million baby boomers about to retire, their 401ks, their IRAs, the whole thing is just melting away at them, again, as a result of the irredeemable paper ticket money. And go to the next slide, please. This is a chart that comes from Bloomberg, and they have an index that tracks the worldwide value of all the equities. It peaked out in March of 2008 at roughly 60 trillion. As of this morning, it's roughly 26 trillion, down nearly $35 trillion. I mean, this is stunning. And so what's happening, folks, is that all of the savings that people have for their retirement is all melting away right now. So one of the questions you might ask, and this really talks to your bill, well, how can you protect yourself? And I think everybody in this room and everybody in this country has a moral obligation to protect themselves and their families best. And go to the next slide, please. And the best way to protect yourself is with gold. Now, the data for this chart I got from Jim Turk. I've checked it. It turns out that at any time in the last 8 years, if you bought gold at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, you had more money. And on average, for the last 8 years, you were up 16%, no down years. Now, if Wall Street had a product, had a mutual fund that was up every year for the last 8 years, given what's happened, and on average up 16%, don't you think you'd have full-page ads, say, in Fortune magazine and Business Week on the Wall Street Journal? But Wall Street does not want you to buy gold. And the reason is Wall Street is a fee business. And at its peak, just the money management part alone, not counting transaction fees, the money managers alone worldwide got something like $500 billion in fees. Whereas if you buy gold, they get a fee one time and then it stops. So they demonize gold. And go to the next slide, please. And this shows the average appreciation for the last 8 years in all the major currencies, the US dollar, the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, the Chinese yen, the euro, the Indian rupee, the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc, and the British pound. These, during this 8-year period, some of these currencies had minor decreases, but all over the world, irredeemable paper ticket money is coming under attack, and it's losing all its value. But again, gold is the way to protect yourself. And go to the next slide, please. So how is it that all this massive malfeasance, this fraud, this outright theft, was able to reach such large proportions? Why didn't our national elected representatives protect us? Why didn't they uphold and protect the Constitution as they've all promised to do? And go to the next slide, please. This shows the campaign contributions just from the financial sector. And of the last, between 1998 and 2008, came to $1.7 billion. This is campaign contributions. Now, some of you will recall Huey Long from Louisiana. Huey Long had this saying that the difference between a large campaign contribution and a bribe was as thin as a hair. Well, actually, he was wrong. There is no difference. So, in effect, the financial guys have bought off our elected representatives. And go to the next slide, please. And more important than the campaign contributions, they spent over $3.4 billion lobbying for special privilege for themselves, special guarantees, special bailouts and whatnot. And this does not include support personnel. This just includes people who had contact with the elected representatives themselves. This data comes from the Center for Responsive Politics. And go to the next slide, please. And look how much money these guys got. I mean, it is unfathomable. So you go back to 1980, the money supply is roughly $2 trillion. The market cap of the S&P 500, these are the 500 most valuable publicly traded companies, was $1 trillion. And the financial sector component of that, you can't even see it on the chart, it was 5%, just $50 billion. And you zip ahead to 2005, and now the money supply has grown from $2 trillion up to $10 trillion. Again, all created flat out of nothing by the banks. And now the market cap of the S&P 500 is $10 trillion. But now the financial sector component of that is 23%. So the value of their companies went from $50 billion to $2.3 trillion. Now think of stock options. Think of all the wealth that went to these people. And go to the next slide, please. And people were sanguine about this because the statements that they're getting from Merrill Lynch, from Lehman Brothers, from Bear Stearns, from Goldman Sachs, it looks like they're all making money. And so the spin that you got from Wall Street is that this was wealth creation. It's not wealth creation. It's just ink on paper. And go to the next slide, please.